What is going on, Headliner Nation? Week 13, fantasy football. The doc is back in the house because we got some injuries to talk about once again. However, we have no moment of silence this week, Ethan.
No moment of silence. That's what we like to see. Nobody is out for the year yet. Let's put the yet on there.
Yes.
We will still probably hear a few names get ruled out for the rest of the season at some point. We got a few guys we're kind of keeping an eye on that aren't really expected to return anytime soon, but just keeping them in the back of our minds.
That's right. We're keeping it fresh, right? Because we know that at some point it can just take a turn for the worse. It is 2020 and stranger things have happened. So we have a long list of names we're going to go through here. We're going to start it off, though, with our big hitters. I mean, we're talking about some of the big names that people are paying attention to here for this week right now. And the first one that we're getting a lot of questions about is Josh Jacobs of the Las Vegas Raiders. Last week, he screwed over a lot of people. It was a difficult matchup. Atlanta's pretty good against the run, but the Falcons just put it to the Raiders. How bad did Josh Jacobs get hurt?
Jacobs is dealing with an ankle sprain. It doesn't seem like this is a high ankle sprain. It looks like a low ankle sprain, which is good because it means that they're probably going to be able to tape it up. He did leave in that third quarter, didn't return. Remember last week when I said Jacobs' play style really does lead to him picking up these kind of like nagging issues. Last week it was a hip. This week it's an ankle. He just finds a way to kind of get banged up all year. He hasn't missed any games yet. But as this team kind of continues to roll along and he keeps playing the way he does, there's a good chance that he could miss a few games to close the year, which is not what you want to hear when it comes to the fantasy playoffs. So I think there's a good chance that this is the week. I think there's a good chance that he misses this week. Devontae Booker could and probably should see an increased workload against a bad Jets team. I still think Booker is probably an RB3 for me this week, but he's going to have plenty of chances to score against this Jets.
Do you remember what you called him last week, Josh Jacobs?
What did I call Josh Jacobs last week?
Because I ended up singing after it, and I said, he came in like a wrecking ball.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
You gave me an excuse to sing it 2 weeks in a row now. That's all on you, buddy. You could have remembered it, and I wouldn't have had to sing it. But
I just said it, and you just sang it anyway. So
I probably would have. You're exactly right. What about Julio Jones? I mean, at this point, his hamstrings like held together with like a purple now and later, a paper clip, and maybe like a 3-inch strip of duct tape, right?
Basically, he missed last week and actually 2 games earlier this season with this hamstring strain. He still hasn't practiced yet. It's going to be a game time decision. It always is with these superstars like Julio. They're going to test it out kind of right before the game. So they're not going to, usually they won't rule him out early, but they might. I'm not holding my breath that he plays this week. It doesn't look like despite the big win last week, it doesn't look like they have any reason to kind of push him to make it back as quickly as possible.
Yep. And we've seen Julio be a decoy in the past. It wouldn't be abnormal for him to, even if he were to suit up and play, to not be, as active as maybe you're hoping for. What about a tight end? Because there's not a whole lot of good tight ends out there, and Zach Ertz wasn't great to start the season, and then he gets hurt and he comes back. Do we even care, Ethan?
I think you have to care just because you have to know that he's coming back. He was activated off the IR, could return as soon as this week. The problem is that Dallas Goedert is coming off probably his 2 best weeks of the season, over 150 yards the last 2 weeks. So for right now, I think it's good to know that Ertz is coming back. You're going to have to find a space for him on your roster, but don't expect him to put up any significant fantasy value anytime soon.
That's right. And if you're feeling fancy, you can always call him Godare. What about a running back? I totally went over your head with that one, didn't I?
Did I call? I usually call him Dallas Goedert.
No way. You just called him Goddard. So I said,
maybe I'm just making mistakes then, Jake.
Whatever. What about DeAndre Swift? This is somebody who has now missed 2 great matchups against Carolina and Houston. And now he gets the Chicago Bears, or does he?
I don't know. This one is so strange to me. Thursday, the interim coach, Darren Bevel, came out, said Swift wasn't cleared from concussion protocol yet. Then later in the day, reports are that he's been dealing with an illness and he had cleared the concussion protocol. So I think he's at the stage where he's cleared the concussion protocol, but he might still be sick. The weirdest part is that Adrian Peterson actually came out and said that Swift doesn't appear to be fully over his symptoms yet, which would indicate that he's probably not over this concussion yet. I'm going to go out on a limb here with all this confusion around is he cleared? Is he not cleared? I'm going to say there's still a pretty good chance that he misses this week. So just plan accordingly with DeAndre Swift.
Do you think Adrian Peterson's just saying that because he's trying to hype up the story so he can start again?
I don't think it's a bad strategy to just be like, yeah, I don't know.
He doesn't look
right. Might want to give him another break.
I think that's exactly what it is. Adrian Peterson's holding on for dear life. What about A.J. Brown of the Tennessee Titans?
Brown's dealing with a hip injury. He was out of the injury report with a missed practice on Thursday. He's been missing practices pretty often because he's been dealing with this knee injury from earlier this season, but now apparently he has something else going on with his hip. I'd say he's a true game time decision because this is a new issue. This isn't something that he's had before. If he doesn't get any practice in on Friday, I think there's a chance that he misses this week.
That sucks because a lot of people need some A.J. Brown. Dalvin Cook is up next. Now, last week, as I was watching the Minnesota Vikings game and I saw Dalvin go down, my sphincter clinched immediately because he was in some pain. He did not look healthy. He needed two people to help him off the field. They went to commercial break. They came back, and dude is sprinting on the sidelines and cutting. So I have no idea what happened. It looked bad, but apparently wasn't as bad.
Yeah, we call that the Paul Pierce effect. Very dramatic off, and then he's fine the next play. He's Cook, that is, has been limited in practice this week. So I do think he is dealing with a low ankle sprain, probably a mild one, but I don't think there's any chance that he misses this game because he did manage to come back last week.
What about DJ Moore? He went down late in the Carolina game. They're on bye week this week, which is great, but do you think there's a chance that we may not see DJ Moore next week either?
I think there is a chance. He's dealing with an ankle sprain, calf sprain. We haven't really gotten an exact diagnosis yet. Initially, watching the video, I actually thought this might be an Achilles injury, so I'm glad it's not that. It's not quite as serious as I initially thought, but he does have an outside chance of returning after the team's bye. I think they're going to be cautious with him. I think that you're probably going to be without him for at least, well, obviously this week with the bye, but at least week 14.
That sucks because he's just starting to turn it on here late in the season once again. All right, now we'll transition over to some of our quick hitters. We'll kind of get some rapid fire going here. And the first one is Tua Tagovailoa. He's back at practice-ish. Are we still going to have some Fitzmagic this week, though?
I think so. Tua's dealing with this thumb sprain. Remember, he hit his thumb on a helmet last week. He is able to get limited practice in, but I think the team's going to lean towards Ryan Fitzpatrick again this week. There's not really any push to make Tua start every week. If he does, though, I'd say he's a QB2, despite a pretty decent matchup against the Bengals.
I mean, I would have much rather seen Tua versus Joe Burrow this week. That would have been a lot more appealing to my football eye.
Yes, very much so.
But I mean, hey, Brandon Allen, he's a close second, I guess. What about Jay Smooth, Jonnu Smith of the Tennessee Titans? Ever since he got injured, it seems like about 4 or 5 weeks ago, he's kind of been on a steady decline, and he's still banged it up.
He is. He's dealing with a knee sprain right now, and he's missed practice thus far this week. He is, honestly, he's not really playing the way that we'd hoped his talent would dictate, but he did play a full set of snaps on Sunday. So even though he's injured, he's still playing his full set of snaps, but used primarily as a blocker for Derrick Henry. Knowing the Titans, they might just line up everybody as a blocker for Derrick Henry for the rest of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But as far as Jonnu goes, I'm not convinced that I trust him this week, even if he plays.
Yeah, it's a big risk now. What was so great to start the season has slowly faded. What about the world's fastest man, Daniel Jones?
Jones left with a hamstring strain. Initially thought this was going to be worse, but apparently he could have returned in that game. They were just being cautious with him. He is getting some limited practice in. I think he's probably going to play this week. And so I guess if you need a QB2, Daniel Jones is going to be there for you.
Well, good. I just hope it doesn't limit that top end speed because when he gets going, boy, he's like a gazelle as long as he doesn't trip himself. Joe Burrow back in the news. How did his surgery go?
The surgery went well. He had surgery to repair that torn ACL, reconstruct that torn ACL. I should say. I should use better verbiage if I'm going to, talk about how great I am as a doctor. The surgery was deemed a success, but really, we're waiting. Again, we want to see how he does these first couple months of rehab. We will probably have a full video about this injury specifically this off season. That's on our agenda. But for right now, I just wanted to kind of keep everybody up to date on Joe Burrow. He had his surgery and now the recovery starts.
Perfect. What about Phillip Lindsay, the backfield in Denver, which isn't, that sought after, but a lot of people maybe could use Melvin Gordon if we're going to be without Phillip Lindsay.
Lindsay's dealing with a knee sprain, similar guy as Josh Jacobs, which we talked about earlier, and that he just always seems like he's kind of banged up. He was limited on Thursday in practice, appears to be trending in the right direction though. So I still think Melvin Gordon is going to see the majority of the work. But I do think Lindsay's going to find a way to work himself in just a bit here this week.
Okay, perfect. What about the Miami backfield? I mean, it's kind of a hot mess at this point. I mean, we've had Ahmed at time produce. We've seen Myles Gaskin produce in the past. What do we think happens here in week 13? Because as of right now, it's kind of up in the air.
It really is. Gaskin has been dealing with this MCL tear that he had a few weeks ago. He got put on IR, and he has been practicing the last 2 weeks, but the team has yet to actually activate him off the IR, and they have until Saturday afternoon to do that. So if we find that Gaskin gets activated Saturday, there's a pretty good chance that he will play. As for Ahmed, he's dealing with his own issues. It doesn't look great for him to play this week. I just don't, I'm not very confident in his ability to come back. He has been getting a little bit of work, limited, dealing with that shoulder injury. But again, if Gaskin returns, he's going to be the guy you want.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I mean, he didn't really do anything to lose his job. Ahmed came in, was serviceable for sure, but Gaskin was the better option, especially earlier in the season with Fitzpatrick under center. But I mean, this is a long list of players, but it could be a lot worse. We're heading into that home stretch. We're turning the corner, Ethan. We're heading into the fantasy playoffs, and we just need to keep our fingers crossed. There's some big names that we just talked about, but the one thing that you can look at is there's so many people dealing with injuries or players ruled out by COVID throughout the week. It's not just, you're not the only person dealing with it, right? Every team is dealing with some type of injuries or player shortcomings on a weekly basis. So don't give up by any means. If you get somebody that's hurt or ruled out, don't worry. I'm sure your opponent does also.
Yeah, that really is the message here, because you have to be adaptable, especially in the fantasy playoffs. It's most leagues, it's one and done. So you have to really keep an eye on everything, because you can't afford to have a zero in your lineup because of a COVID case or because you're just not paying attention. This is the time. If you're in the fantasy playoffs, you need to be paying attention. And so we're hopefully going to keep everybody as up to date as possible on these injuries. If you have anybody that you have a question about, if we didn't cover them, make sure that you leave a comment down below. I'm doing my best to get to all those comments. I really appreciate everybody reaching out, asking, getting those conversations going in the comment section, because it just helps me to know who you guys are worried about.
Yep, exactly. Because everybody's got questions about somebody, right? I mean, we can make this show 4 hours long if we wanted to. But before we get out here, I want to make sure I wish you good luck this weekend. Also, we find ourselves in the playoffs of the Scott Fish Bowl. If you've never heard of the Scott Fish Bowl, it's an industry league that has 1,200 teams.
1,400.
Yeah, that's right. They bumped it up this year. So 1,400. Me and Ethan made the playoffs. High five virtually. Way to go, Ethan. We're going to represent Headliner Nation this week, try to go out there and get some wins. But like you said, if you have questions, make sure you leave them down below. We greatly appreciate the support, and we'll have more up-to-date information for you Saturday night at the live show, 9 p.m. Eastern time. If you can tune in, we would love to talk to you and answer as many questions as possible. But here it is, another week down. I appreciate the time, Dr. Ethan Turner, and we'll look forward to week 14 now. But first, let's all go out there and get a dub here in week 13.
That's right.
That's right. It's all about the wins, right? So you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you later.